Hello, good evening and welcome to episode 28 of Fracking Nightmare. So today I've hot-tailed it down the M1 and M42, M5 down to Plymouth, and I left Hull this afternoon, or Crawberry Hill to be more precise, and it was dull and overcast and pretty damp. This evening here in the southwest it's warm and humid, so it's a little uncomfortable in the studio, but nonetheless we're here with more news on the fracking agenda. So why do we do this? Why have many people given up their normal lives, their lives in the matrix, to campaign against this abomination? Well, in today's program, we're going to look at what is unfolding in this country. We're going to look at the state of play of the British political stance on the fracking agenda and the naive statements that the politicians trot out in the hope that you will vote for them or vote them back into office next May. Now, inevitably, as more and more people come into this campaign and we make contact with people overseas who have been fighting against this nightmare for a lot longer than many of us here in the UK. And it is with great sadness that I learned late last week that a campaigner in the US, in Pennsylvania, Terry Greenwood, had died. Terry had been a tireless campaigner for the past 7 years. In his own words, he said, find the word. He said, in January 2008, they got one well drilled and our well went. So we didn't have no drinking water. And 7 days later, they finally brought us some drinking water. Well, Terry learned the hard way what this industry can do when it goes unchallenged. It destroyed his livelihood, and ultimately, it quite probably contributed to taking his life. So I want to start today's show with a 7-minute tribute to the life and the work of Terry Greenwood.
Clean water is more important than gas. My name is Terry Greenwood. I live in western Pennsylvania, southwestern Pennsylvania, in Washington County. I have a farm, 60 acres. I didn't sign a lease. The lease is from 1921. I have 60 acres. Dominion Gas come on my property in 2007 and said, we're going to drill some wells on your property. I said, go on the other 60 acres that's not being used because I need my property. So they come on the property in November 2007. Didn't tell me they was coming on, just cut the fence, come on in, start building roads. In January 2008, they got one well drilled. Our well water went, so we didn't have no drinking water. And 7 days later, they finally brought us some drinking water, which we're still using a water fountain, drinking out of it. Now we're paying for it because they discontinued it. They can do what they want to because they're so big, and who you going to call? Nobody will listen to you. Within 30 days of the first well being drilled, our water come out of the spigot just like Dimmick's water, like iced tea is what it looked like. That's what it come out of the spigot. So they started bringing us drinking water. And then February, when I lost all the cattle, they had a blowout, and all the water from the frack stuff was running into the pasture, into the pond where the cattle drank. And I had 19 head of cattle, and in 2008, so 2.5 months later, my cows were having calves. I lost 10 calves out of 19 cows that were stillborn and a 2-year-old cow. we was here for 18 years, and I never had no problems until the gas companies come on. Then that's when I started having all these problems. All my calves that was born for 2008, I had 8 live ones, 10 dead ones. 4 of them was blind, stillborn, and 1 had a cleft palate for 2008. And that's when they drank that water when they drilled up here on the top field. They come on our property, drilled 2 vertical wells, 450 feet from our drinking water, and the well on the top field is 1,000 feet from the house. But it ruined all our property in that. I said, how are you going to protect me? They says, well, we'll protect you. So they sent me a letter and said, we will protect your waters. I said, okay. I didn't have a choice. They were going to eminent domain my property because the lease was a never-ending lease. Down to where the cattle are drinking out of a water buffalo now because they ruined the pond, they ruined the spring. This is the pond from 2007. The cattle was walking in this pond. The pond was good. This was before the gas company even come on the property. This one is 2008, and we had it fenced off. And there's what the water turned like. And there's the well, and it's all downhill right here. And it all run right into this pond. All them chemicals are heavy. They sink to the bottom.
Did you get the water tested?
They tested it in 2009, said the water is good. But they didn't. I asked for a soil sample. I said, test the soil on the bottom of the pond. DEP would not test it.
Why?
DEP said that pond is not for human consumption.
Not for human consumption?
Yes, and I told DEP that I sell my cattle every year to 84 auction for people to eat. I said, that is for human consumption.
What did they say for that?
Nothing. They wouldn't even reply to me after that. They just ignored me. Pictures of it. Here's what the eyes look like in them calves that died. This was a stillborn calf dead when it was born, and that's what color they are. That color blue. Now this one, I didn't take the picture of the white eye. This one had the white eye. I have that calf. I still have that calf in a deep freeze. That calf is in the deep freeze. That's a calf that died there. The mother didn't even clean it off. I called the DEP, called the gas company, and the DEP did not do nothing. They said that's a farmer's lock, and refused to do anything about it. And nobody has done nothing about it since. And I've had nothing but trouble with my cattle. But this old lease, it don't matter if it's a new lease, an old lease, once they're on your property, they're going to do what they want to do. That was a hayfield over there. And that's what's left of that hayfield over there. It's gone. I'm hurt because nobody will help you on it. The government will not help you. DEP will not help you. EPA hasn't done nothing. And only one's benefit is the gas company. DEP and the gas company says, we didn't do nothing wrong, but I did call DEP, which is supposed to help you, and they says, there's nothing wrong with that water. They dump it in the fields in West Virginia. I request that the gas companies be held accountable for the problems they cause. The terrorizing, the threats, the harassment I have experienced on my own property. And that's the most important. Once you ruin the water, you don't have nothing left. And you don't want them around here, because I've never been up here before, and I like all these waters up here, and that's pretty precious. I wish we had water like that down in western Pennsylvania, because western Pennsylvania is losing all its waters, because we didn't have city water. It's 1.5 miles down the road, and it don't do me no good down there. So I've got a farm with 60 acres with a temporary water supply from a gas company, and that's how they treat you. Yeah, they treat you dirty. When they come on your property, they say, we can do what we want to. Who are you going to call? You can't call your neighbors because they can't help you. You call Harrisburg. I called Harrisburg, called Farm Bureau, called everybody. They said, what do you want us to do? Nobody will stick up for you, so you got to stick together and keep them away from here. Yeah. Western Pennsylvania is getting like Colorado, Texas, and every place else, so keep them out of here. Yeah. I don't know what it'll take, but keep them out of here. Yeah. So. And the gas company says there's nothing wrong with the waters.
What do you
but
think?
It killed the cattle, and it'll kill the people next. That's what'll happen. Whatever's in them chemicals, it killed my animals, and I know it'll kill people later down the road.
Terry Greenwood will be revered by campaigners throughout North America, and particularly in his home state of Pennsylvania. For the last 7 years, he has been tireless in his efforts to raise awareness of this industry, and the fact that this industry cannot in any way, shape or form be regulated. This industry will continue to destroy livelihoods, destroy lives, and make large tracts of land completely uninhabitable unless we, the people, stop it. Now, in this country, the anti-fracking community is growing at a phenomenal rate of knots. It is, without any shadow of doubt, the fastest growing community movement in the country. Some refer to it as an environmental movement, and of course that would be true. But it goes beyond just environmental. This is literally about community and the well-being of community. And of course the British government is currently just working on ways in which it can work out how to throw more and more money at communities to encourage them to buy into this abomination. Not satisfied with throwing £100,000 at communities who embrace the industry, then raise the stakes to increasing the offer of 100% of the business rates, the norm, of course, being 50% to local communities. Its latest offering was banded as £800,000 to any community that embraces this industry. But that number in of itself tells a story, because it's not £800,000, it's £20,000 per well. So consequently, that statement belies the fact that each community that embraces this is potentially going to be looking at something like 40 wells, which is about 5 pads, with each pad having up to 8 horizontal wells flowing from it. So this is really akin to asking an individual what their price is to drink a cup that contains a 15% diluted solution of hydrochloric acid. The bottom line is, only a complete idiot or psychopath, like Tony Blair perhaps, might drink it. The rest of the population would recognize that it would be completely insane to do so, and there is no price that could persuade them to drink it. So fortunately, more and more people are recognizing the phenomenal folly of this industry, and there are now some 200 anti-fracking communities around the country, and these communities cross right across the social and the political spectrum. And it's perhaps indicative of the growth of the awareness that in the recent Observer Ethical Awards, the Local Hero Award was won by none other than 82-year-old Ann Power. And I have a wonderful picture of Ann here. Ann was ever present at Barton Moss through the campaign. I met with her on the second day of the Barton Moss campaign, and she was there pretty much almost every day right through to the end of the 149-day campaign. Ann, of course, was never arrested. The Greater Manchester Police, recognising that it would be a massive own goal to arrest Ann, so they tried numerous tactics to marginalise her and take her out of the front line. But regardless of the police tactics, Ann certainly gained the respect not only of the protection community but also of the Greater Manchester Police. And I want to share a short clip from a piece of video footage. This is actually from the 9th of January this year. And this is a piece of video that I shot at Barton Moss on the morning. And look at what happened with Ann as she is effectively intimidated by the Greater Manchester Police. And see how Ann responds to this intimidation. I have to say, she responded rather better than me.
I've never got the water. You're absolutely right. More than you like to be here. But, you know, I mean, all these people. We go on to our water.
Well, keep moving, please.
Everybody is moving. Thank you, officer.
Keep moving.
Keep parroting, officer.
Keep moving.
Keep saying unintelligent things.
Stop answering it. Just ignore it. Let keep saying it.
Stop moving. Have I stopped moving for a single second? Don't be ridiculous. What are these feet doing?
Will you keep moving then,
I
please?
only stop. I don't even stop when you're muttering in my ear.
Keep moving, please.
She has not stopped moving, officer, and 6
She's
cameras
obstructing the highway. She knows she's obstructing the highway. And if she continues, she will be arrested. She can either stand to the side or she will be arrested. So keep moving, please.
She has 6
Keep
cameras.
moving, please. You sound like a bully. I'm just telling her. Just keep moving. She knows what she's doing. Keep moving, please.
Take one for the team today.
I know you've got the pips on your
Keep
shoulders.
moving,
You
please.
look like you're in charge.
I'm afraid
She knows what she's doing.
your entry to the 100 metres there on the
Keep
Olympic
playing.
team it's been denied. You're not quick enough, my darling.
Keep moving then,
Maybe
please.
next year.
Keep moving.
Why are the police pushing me? I don't understand what they're doing.
And have you consented to being touched?
No, I
Have you
have not.
consented to being pushed?
No, no.
Just wanted to be clear for the record.
Right, keep going. Keep moving, please.
Stop
Keep moving, please. Keep moving.
Everybody's
A
moving.
bit faster, please.
Please stop pushing. Thank you.
Keep moving.
Everybody is still moving.
Keep moving, please.
I've got an old lady again.
Please stop.
We've got 5 cameras taking the same angle. Can somebody come round the other side? People are being pushed.
We look after our own. She's quite fine, thank you. We are looking after Anne. She's quite fine. Thank you.
We're protecting her.
Pretty good myself.
Pushing against the line.
Well done, Jamie.
We shouldn't have to protect her. Protect her.
I'm trying to walk as quickly as I can.
Please
My
don't
feet are constantly moving. I haven't stopped
These two
yet.
arrested, please.
Oh, you're joking.
No.
You're joking. It's a farce.
No, not again.
I'm not looking you up. Do us a favour.
Scum!
Stand there against the fence.
No, it's not like so.
We'll walk up to the highway. We'll start today.
Let's get up.
Keep moving, please. Keep moving, please. Thank you.
Can you move that away from my face, please? No. Can you move that away from my face?
I'm not in your face. I am not anywhere near your face. So they're making the law officer go along as well? Absolutely.
Thank you, please. If you can't keep up, you'll have to travel for your own safety.
That's got your fancy little thing, that was it.
Okay, the indomitable Anne Power, who no doubt will be back at Barton Moss or wherever it is that iGas or whomever else tries to get their bits in the ground in the northwest of England. Now, we're going to take a break in a second, and once again I want to take the opportunity to show the animation produced by David Monk, Brian Monk's son, of the proliferation of the gas wells drilled in southern Queensland literally in the space of just 5 years. 5,500 wells drilled in an area the size of the UK, and in that time it has seriously damaged the ecology of southern Queensland. And those of you who have watched episodes 2 and episodes 18 of Fracking Nightmare, in which I interviewed Brian Monk, will know of the phenomenal impact it has had on Brian's farm, on his livelihood, and on the health of his family. As David himself says, they were caught asleep at the wheel. God forbid that we have the same experience in the UK.
So where are the gas wells? Number 1, Tara Township. Here's the town of Tara. Let's zoom out and find a common radius measurement. So we're looking at about 18 kilometres, so that'd put 6 gas wells within 18 kilometres. So number 2, Chinchilla Township. So here's the township of Chinchilla. We zoom out, we get our 18 kilometres again, which gives us about 10 gas wells within the 18 kilometre radius. Now number 3, Dalby Township. Okay, so the Dalby Township, let's zoom out, get to our measurement tool, and for Dalby we end up with 1 gas well within a 19 kilometre radius. Number 4, the unlucky ones in the gas fields. This is QGC BG Group's Kenya Gas Fields processing plant on the edge of several residential estates and farms. The evaporation ponds alone cover almost 5.5 kilometres. So let's put it in perspective. Let's zoom out from the town of Chinchilla and make a comparison. The entire width from town end to end is 3.21 kilometres. The length is about 3.29 kilometres. The evaporation ponds would cover Chinchilla 1.5 times. Let's zoom out from one of QGC's gas fields. Yes, the dots are gas wells. Yes, the industry isn't even exporting yet. Go to our measurement tool and we have around a 22 kilometre radius. Now I'll give you an example of just how safe human beings will be throughout Australia with the unconventional gas industry. QGC's Catewell cluster is in the heart of a residential estate. So Toowoomba, unconventional gas has its eyes seriously fixed on you and your surrounds. So no gas wells within a 32 kilometre radius, but if we go for a flight out to your west, you'll see the multinational giants aren't too far away. We pass Mount Irving, Mount Moriah, West Prairie, Cecil Plains, Grassdale, Cumberilla. Are you enjoying the flight? Bilby, Kogan, Weambilla. I can't see why people are whinging. This should be in everyone's backyard, shouldn't it? Here's QGC's tenements, Origin Energy's tenements. Oh, hang on, they're actually multinational corporations. Do you want this where you live? And ending with miles. And how about a flyover from Cecil Plains to central Queensland? This is beautiful farming country. Unfortunately, those that are fixated on containment of the unconventional gas global giants are delusional. Prime agricultural land represents easier, more accessible drilling. It is not protected, as the government has indicated it does not have the right to take a landholder's right to negotiate with a gas company away from them, even if they are on prime agricultural land. Zooming out and moving further north now, you can see we've really been asleep at the wheel. Zooming in, the blurred clusters turn into definable spots, each one potentially causing irreversible damage to the country. I just cannot stress enough that a majority of the unconventional gas wells are not yet in production. The true effects will become undeniable upon export. What's the scale of damage over Queensland so far? The gas industry is only in first gear in one state, covering over 1,000 kilometres long, over 300 kilometres wide. Some very credible projections put total potential unconventional gas well numbers in excess of 200,000 for Queensland alone. It is not the intent of this video to encourage a defeatist thought process. On the contrary, unconventional gas has been heavily wounded in the eyes of the public. Our window of opportunity still exists. Think national, not in my backyard. Stop the first export train, the Surat Basin to Gladstone's Curtis Island, and stop the unconventional gas industry in this country.
Well, 5,500 wells. So you can see that the life's work of Terry Greenwood and the commitment of Ann Power are certainly well founded. So it's congratulations to Anne on your recognition as the local hero. You were certainly the focal point at Barton Moss, and thank you for your good humour and really your constant support of the Barton Moss camp. And of course the Barton Moss protection community came second in the Local Hero Awards. And as the Greater Manchester Police have confirmed, they photographed some 600 plus people during the course of the campaign. Now that doesn't include the people that came to the weekend events, but that's 600 plus separate individuals that they identified on Barton Moss Road escorting the convoys. So now one hopes, of course, that Greater Manchester Police are not planning on maintaining a list of potential domestic extremists like their colleagues in the Met. But let me tell you that this increasing group right across the country, this increasing community of anti-fracking campaigners would be quite happy, I'm sure, in most cases, to be recognised for their efforts in preventing this abomination coming into this country. Now, over the last few weeks, I have been spending as much time as possible up in East Yorkshire on the Wolds. It's an area of the country that I wasn't particularly familiar with. I had certainly never visited the beautiful city or town of Beverley, or indeed been to its Minster. It is a wonderful part of the country, although the weather can be a little bit rough at times there, but nothing that we weren't prepared for at Barton Moss. But the attitude of the Humberside police is currently very different to that of both the Sussex police and the Greater Manchester police, in that Humberside police have decided that they will treat the protection community as pickets, and they will utilise the Trade Union and Labour Relations Act to force the protection community off the roads and to the side of the road so that they could become little more than observers. Well, a few days ago, I was at West Newton. Now, it's very difficult to man the two camps. They're about 14 miles apart, and the phone connectivity from West Newton isn't that great. But we got a call from the small number of protectors at West Newton to say that some trucks had gone in. So a convoy of 5 cars hightailed it across the Wolds to get to West Newton just a few minutes before the trucks came out. And this short video will give you an idea as to how the Humberside police are treating the protection community.
Clear the road, please. Move back. Here we go. Don't want anyone getting knocked over.
This is Sergeant here.
Move back, please.
He believes the best way to work with people is bullying them and pushing them out. So there's Humberside police in action right there, right then. 1878. There he is.
Move out the carriageway, please.
Move then. So yeah, so here we are. So this is what
Shoving me around, who do you think you are?
Looking after your welfare.
You're looking after my welfare.
I'm pressed.
Get your hands off. 1878.
I am pressed. I'm not in your way. I'm not instructing the highway.
Obstructing the highway.
You get your hands off me, okay?
Move back. You're obstructing the highway.
I'm not obstructing the highway at all.
You're obstructing the
You're
highway.
obstructing the highway, and you're also obstructing the press.
Move back. I'm not obstructing you. You can film. Move back.
I'm not in the way.
What this officer believes is the way to work with this.
Vehicles moving in the carriageway and you're obstructing it.
No, we're not. I'm not obstructing. No, I'm not. You can make it up as you go along.
Mind your back, pal.
Keep your hands off me. I've just said keep your hands off me.
I am. I'm asking you to move back.
Keep your hands off me.
Move back, please. Just mind your backs. Mind.
Follow me. I know get out. We're down on the bottom road, mate.
Did you get all them assaults?
Got him.
Yeah, well, you'll be getting sued for assaulting us.
Marriott Drilling.
Yes, it's 1, 2, 3, 5.
Please stop touching me. Please stop touching me. We're allowed to peacefully protest in this country. I want to go to the car. I want to go to my car. Don't get your hands off me, please. Get your hands off me then. In this country, we are allowed to peacefully protest. We're also allowed to slow walk vehicles in and out. And the laws basically, the judge and magistrates agree with us that we can slow walk vehicles out.
Okay, so that's going to be...
So as you saw, Officer 666 came along there in the role of community liaison, but it wasn't necessarily appreciated by the group of Humberside police officers there who were treating the protectors as pickets. And as you saw, we were all manhandled much more than ever we were at, individually that is, at either Balcombe or Barton Moss. Collectively, it's a slightly different ball game, as you'll be very familiar. But why is it that Humberside police are behaving in this way? It's very simple, because they can, because they have the numerical superiority. Now, the fact is that Humberside police are acting unlawfully, because the reality is that there can be no doubt whatsoever that the protection community are assembled at Crawberry Hill and West Newton under the Human Rights Act of 1998, which is effectively the UK legislation that is in support of the European human rights directives. Now, in particular, Articles 10 and 11 are applied, and that is where the protectors have the fundamental right of assembly and the fundamental right to protest. And in fact, Humberside police, as with any police force in this country, are actually lawfully and legally bound to facilitate that protest. But as you clearly see in the video, they are acting and behaving as nothing other than the corporate enforcers for Rathlin Energy. Now, the orange convoys that have been ubiquitous at Barton Moss and also at West Newton and Crawberry Hill, one of the protection community discovered that they had a base just north of Driffield, about 15 or so miles north of Beverley, and we paid them a visit, just a courtesy call, just to drop some flyers, and I would have shown you the photographs, but I had a major technical failure just before we went on air and lost my hard drive. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I tell you. Anyway, you could find those pictures on my Facebook pages or the Facebook page of Crawberry Hill, Battle for Crawberry Hill. So do go along and check that out. We left some information for the drivers of Total Environmental Technology to browse through so that they can see, you know, the magnitude of what it is that they're culpable for in this country. Now, during the course of the week, the protection community has certainly not been inactive. The Wolds of Yorkshire are very thinly populated. It's a very rural area, and although Hull is very much a Labour stronghold, the Wolds are very conservative, with both a small and a large C. But the protectors have been out with the local anti-fracking groups and conducting a number of meetings. In fact, there were 4 meetings held during the past week. And then on Saturday, we joined the local Labour Party. Well, actually, we didn't join them. We just sort of tagged along, because we heard that the Labour Party were conducting a poll in Beverley on Saturday morning to establish the views of the local residents with regards to fracking in East Yorkshire. So whilst I was there and helping to distribute flyers, and I have to say that Beverley's quite hard work on a Saturday morning. I was probably only giving 1 flyer to every 5 or so people I approached, whereas in Manchester it was 1 in every 2 or every 3 perhaps. But later on during the course of the morning, the local organiser, George McManus, was joined by the sitting Labour MP for Hull East, Karl Turner. And I grabbed them for a few minutes to have a quick chat, and here's what transpired. All right, so I'm here with George McManus from the Beverley Labour Party and Karl Turner, who's the MP for East Hull.
So, guys, you've organised this public awareness event in the centre of Beverley, giving people the opportunity to vote on whether or not they think fracking is a good idea. How do you think today's gone?
We have had a massive response. I reckon in the last 2 hours we've seen 750 ballot papers completed. We've had a range of views, a range of opinions, and we've handed out lots of information leaflets. It's quite clear that some people hold very strong views for and against. It's also quite clear that there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of people don't really know what to think. They know that it's a serious issue, but they haven't formulated an opinion yet.
So what would you say the split has been on the people that you've spoken with?
It's impossible to tell. People seem to be searching us out who are anti-fracking. Possibly because they've heard it was publicised and intending to make sure they get their vote in. But we've also had a lot of people that have been voting to say that they support the principle. We'll do a tally later and we'll let you know.
I've got to say, I've found Beverley quite hard work. I mean, the number of people accepting the flyers has probably been about 1 in 5, whereas I'm more used to like 1 in 2 or 1 in 3.
Well, welcome to Beverley. We're out here every month and so we know Beverley very well.
Now, Karl, you're the sitting MP. The Labour Party policy on fracking would appear to be pro at the moment.
Well, I think, look, what the Labour Party is saying is we need an evidence base for it. We need to have some scientific evidence. We're saying we are concerned about the dash for gas. Personally, I favour renewables more. Clearly, we need to know what public mood is as well, and that's the exercise today, actually. The Beverley Labour Party have organised this street stall where people get the opportunity to engage on the issue and vote, whether they're in favour or not, and that's a very important thing. But my own point on this is the government have got a tendency for a dash for gas. I'm concerned about that. I accept that we have to have energy security at the priority of government in order actually to bring down the cost of energy to people in their domestic homes.
But you said about evidence needed. I mean, how much evidence does the Labour Party need, though? Because if the evidence is very clear from the US, from Canada, from Australia, the academic evidence is there, the likes of Professor Robert Oswald, who's looked at the impact on US farming.
Absolutely. Look, the reality is this. If you ask for an expert to give evidence, I'm a criminal lawyer by trade, you can get an opinion saying one thing, and then just as good an opinion, just as qualified opinion, saying the exact opposite. But we need to have a genuine, honest, open debate on the issue and find out what the real evidence is on this issue. I'm concerned, personally, I'll be honest, I've been pretty clear about this, I've said it publicly, I've got concerns about the dash for gas. I accept that we have to have our eye on energy security. It's important to bring down the cost of living. That's the main priority of the Labour government going into the Labour Party going into the next general election. But we should just be a little bit concerned about the issues that people raise on this very important subject.
What you've got to remember is the situation in America, especially the geology, is fundamentally different to what we have here. In the Humber Basin, the geology is much more folded, much more disturbed than you find in the northeast, especially the US. We do not have the technical data as yet to prove that this is safe. And until we can show that it's safe, I don't think there should be any further progress. That's what Karl talks about when he talks about gathering evidence. Labour believes in basing policy on evidence, not in hearsay, not in profits, but on what's best for the future of the country as a whole.
But I've spoken to a number of MPs from all parties, and with the exception of the Green Party, who, with all due respect, are not going to form the next government. But everybody basically says exactly the same thing, and that is that they are very anti-fracking coming into their location, but they still support the overall agenda.
If you look at what the government's doing, and the fact that the Queen's speech last week shows that they are going to change the trespass law, which has been here virtually since Magna Carta, so as to make it easier for the extractors to go in, withdraw gas from under your property and my property without your permission, is a fundamental change. This government is going hell for leather for shale gas, and so there's a big difference between between the parties.
So do you think there's a point coming where Ed Miliband and his advisors actually recognise that if they come out with a strong anti-fracking stance, then it will completely change the whole political landscape in this country? Because every time there is a poll by the media, then it would seem that it seems to be about 80% against and 20% for.
I don't think Ed Miliband makes policy based on public opinion. It's very important, of course, to gauge opinion, but I think the evidence should dictate policy on this issue. And that's what the Labour Party have said. You say the three main parties are similar on the issue. It's not true, actually. What the Tories are saying, a lot of the Tories, backbench and peers in the House of Lords are saying is shale gas is fine, providing it's not in the south of England, it's not in the posh areas, the areas that vote Conservative. Do it in the north by all means, but don't do it in Beverley.
But this is a Conservative area.
I'm about to make the point. Don't do it in Beverley and Walkington, where people vote Tory. That's what the Tories are saying. The Labour Party is saying we need evidence-based, we need to be absolutely clear on the evidence, and that's our issue. But of course, we have a concern about energy security as well.
Thanks for that.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks a lot.
So there you have it. So, Karl, just how much evidence do you need? Why don't you go and take a look at some of the videos from North America. Look at the tribute to Terry Greenwood. Look at the work of Terry Greenwood. Look at the efforts of Brian Monk in Australia to raise awareness. And all you can trot out is debate. Or we want debate. At what point do you actually get off the fence? I have to say that George McManus actually seemed to have his finger on the pulse and had done some research. I'm afraid that Karl Turner, what you demonstrate is the classic symptoms of an MP. Totally incapable of independent thought, and all you're able to do is trot out the party line. And I love the bit about the Labour Party doesn't base policy on public opinion. Why should you indeed give a damn what the proletariat think about this abomination? Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll see the results of that poll.
%60 of the English countryside is under threat from fracking, a process which has transformed the landscape in many parts of the United States and Australia, and contaminated the drinking water and air with highly toxic chemicals and gases.
1 in 3 hydraulic fracturing was using a carcinogen. So it really is a chemical cocktail that goes into the earth, of which up to 40% remains there.
The grandchildren were in the bath and they started screaming and everything that was in the water was burnt.
The MDs have been instructed not to report any negative health effects that they believe to be associated with living over a gas field.
There's nothing inherent about the shale gas process that is going to lead to problems.
Some of this material was actually taken to a large sewage treatment works, which had no capacity to handle radioactive materials of this kind.
800,000 gallons was dumped into the Manchester Ship Canal.
50 seismic events were recorded during just 6 fracking treatments.
What is the minimum depth that the fracking will fracture?
We can't tell you until we drill the exploration.
Have you no idea whatsoever? Because it doesn't look like you've done your research.
Shale gas is also the future, and we will make it happen.
We are just numbers, and we are sat on this rich vein of gas, and they will do and say anything to get that gas out of the ground.
And welcome back to part 3 of Fracking Nightmare. Well, before we go back to Beverley and look at the results of the poll on fracking, I just want to mention that in the break we showed the trailer for Marco Jackson's outstanding documentary, The Truth Behind the Dash for Gas. Now, many individuals have watched this documentary over the past 9 months or so since it was released. And Marco has been constantly tweaking it and making minor improvements to it. And now he would like to be able to put it on general release. But to do so, he has to pay the licensing for the various photographs and video clips that he has used in the film, which it's completely legitimate to use when it's on effectively private screenings, but to go into the wider public arena, then he does have to have these copyright issues resolved. Now, he's potentially looking to raise about £4,500 to cover this. And if you want to contribute, then you can go to this website. It's www.kickstarter.com projects/ a random number 952900563 / the truth behind the dash for gas. If you simply search for Kickstarter, Truth Behind the Dash for Gas, you will find the relevant page. And if you want to make a contribution to helping Marco get his documentary into the wider arena, then please do so. Marco also advises me that the film is going to be shown on the Pyramid stage at the Glastonbury Festival this year. So it all helps in the raising of further awareness. Now, some 10,000 plus flyers had been distributed in the communities around Beverley and Hull over the past few weeks. And obviously there was quite a bit of canvassing and some education going on in Beverley Town Centre on Saturday, where the Labour Party had taken the initiative to hold a poll on public opinion regarding fracking. And Crawberry Hill is situated about 3.5 miles to the west of Beverley, and the other site, West Newton, is about 8 miles to the east. So here's Councillor Margaret Pinder, a former Mayor of Beverley, to share the result of the poll. Right, I'm here in Beverley Town Centre with Councillor Margaret Pinder, the former Mayor of Beverley. Now, Margaret, you've been working with the group here today to help raise awareness of the fracking issue, and I believe you've got a result of the ballot.
Yes, we do. We held a ballot, and I think what's important is that we didn't present it as a party political. We were actually just canvassing opinion, and we've had a quite extraordinary result. We had papers which had a simple answer yes, no, don't know answer about fracking. And we had a quite extraordinary response. We've opened the ballot. We've had an independent gentleman from one of the local churches come and verify the result. So in favour of fracking, we had 99 people voting in favour of fracking. We had 32 don't know, but we had 344 vote against fracking. So out of the ballot, which would total was 475, 344 of those were very definitely against.
So that's, off the top of my head, that's close on 70% against.
Yes, which I think reflects actually pretty well views.
Right across the country.
Right across the country.
So the Labour Party policy at the moment would appear to be pro-fracking. So do you think that the Labour Party is actually starting to recognise that there is a public groundswell against this process?
Yes, I think the Labour Party view is that they're looking at opinions, like why something like this today is very important, because of the issues. There's a matter of public opinion, there's the issues of just general energy policy, and also there are certain worrying things in the Queen's speech, like the legislation to allow change the laws on trespass, which have been in place for centuries, and things like that. It's about civil liberties and property rights that are obviously very worrying.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting few months because, of course, Rathlin Energy are out at West Newton and the Walkington Heads here at Crawberry Hill, and it's becoming increasingly apparent that the local population are beginning to realise they haven't necessarily been told the whole story by Rathlin.
Yes, I mean, I think the issue is that information is very important to get out there for people. I mean, I myself felt very strongly that I wasn't as well informed as I could be, so I've made it my business to look into it. And I think people do need to be informed, because I think there's there's fracking, but there also is the wider energy debate, the whole thing about the importance of renewables, about actually building housing that is low energy, eco housing. I think it's a very complex and a very interesting debate, but I think awareness is being raised slowly, but it's certainly getting there.
Well, full credit to the Labour Party for organising this event in Beverley today, and I think we had sort of 400, was it 400 people?
475, so that's
475 voted, but I think something like about 4,000 information sheets were given out in the town here, so hopefully that all helps raise awareness.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. I say, from the point of view of the Labour Party, it was, we weren't pushing it as a political agenda. We really was trying to, and I think because of that, we did get the result we've seen, which of course is more valuable than, because we presented it as a neutral ballot.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, so thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
At 72%, pretty conclusive, eh? Well, that tends to follow the pattern wherever you go around the country. Whether it's the Manchester Evening News running a poll or the Yorkshire Evening Post, it's always in the ballpark of 70 to 80%. Now, the Daily Mirror, when they ran a poll, it was over 90%. Now, it's very clear that to anyone who considers themselves to be an environmentalist or an ecologist, or probably sits to the left of centre in the political spectrum, is very much already part of the anti-fracking community. So the challenge is now to reach out to Middle England, to those who sit on the centre of the political spectrum or even a little bit to the right, and get these people to look beyond the potential financial returns. Actually, if you're a small investor, it'll be significant financial losses. So if we could get the message across to the wider community that this abomination has no place in a heavily densely populated country like the UK, then we can change the political landscape. People like Karl Turner, once they realise that their seats are at risk unless the Labour Party changes its stance on fracking, and although he denied that individual MPs are all saying that they will resist hydraulic fracturing in their constituency, but they still support the overall agenda, thus doing this, well, it ain't going to stack up, and we see through it. So it's time to get off the fence. Karl Turner, Andrew Wire, Charlie Elphick. It's not going to cut it. If you want to hold on to your seat, you need to start listening to your electorate and recognising that 80% plus of the electorate do not want this abomination anywhere near them, and they also recognise that it has no place in this country. Now, meanwhile, back at Balcombe, you remember that a few weeks ago, West Sussex County Council granted planning permission for Quadrilla to return. And of course, Quadrilla said that they're not going to frack, but the County Council still awarded the planning permission, but despite the fact that there were just 9 communications in support of the planning application and 889 against. So pretty much 100 to 1. Now, the anti-fracking group at Balcombe have announced that they are going to launch a legal challenge to West Sussex County Council's ruling. And in this judicial review, and I will quote, West Sussex acted unlawfully by assuming the Environment Agency and Health and Safety executive statements on air and water quality could be relied upon. And you will recall when I talked about the planning officer's recommendation that the most common word in that report was assuming. It goes on, the planning committee was misdirected over Environment Agency permits and Quadrilla's record on complying with planning conditions. Advice on health, safety and environment guidance and the benefits of a legal agreement with Quadrilla was flawed. The committee failed to follow its resolution passed by the council last October on approving oil and gas developments. Advice to the committee that the weight of public opinion was not a relevant consideration was wrong in law. That, I think, is absolutely fundamental here. The committee should have considered whether approving the application would lead to greater costs for policing protests in future. Well, Sussex Police have also been subjected to a review of their performance at Balcombe last summer. And the report found that police missed early intelligence about how the protests might develop. In fact, I think we can bring this up on the screen. Some sections of the force weren't aware of the operation or didn't recognise the significance of the protest. I can assure you they were after being there for a few days. There were confusing lines of command. Officers on the ground didn't get accurate information during daily briefings. Yeah, because if they'd have got accurate information, then they would have probably asked to be sent home. Commanders and planners became exhausted. There was no clear prosecution policy. Some police decisions came under outside pressure, and police didn't fully consider the role police didn't fully consider the role of the police and crime commissioner. Well, I think probably the same findings could be levelled at the Greater Manchester Police and potentially ultimately at Humberside Police. Although having said that, Humberside Police I think could take some lessons from both Greater Manchester and Sussex, not least that they might get the actual legislation that they need to be operating under correct. Now, we do what we do, all based on your support. Those of us who have effectively elected to operate outside of the matrix are totally dependent on the support from those who remain within it. And if you feel that you can support our work, and that includes the printing and publication of flyers. In fact, some 10,000 flyers were contributed to the East Humberside campaign by the fracking awareness movement here. So if you wish to contribute in some way, shape or form, please go to www.frackingnightmare.com and look at the donation buttons on the left-hand side of the page. Now, there are people literally from all walks of life who are recognising that this commitment is full-time. And I want to close tonight's programme with a short video that was recorded at a meeting in Hull last Thursday. And this is a local resident, Kirsty, who at the end of the meeting took the platform to share with the audience why it was that she has devoted her life to fighting this abomination. And I'm sure this won't be the last time I play this clip. It's incredibly moving. And Kirsty, you're an absolute star, and it's a pleasure and an honour to be alongside you both at Barton Moss and at Crawberry Hill. Please watch this. Thank you. Good night. See you next week.
Right, so my name's Kirsty. I don't usually live in a ditch by the side of a road, but the reason being is because there comes a point where enough is enough, because I'm sure a lot of you have written letters, emails, you felt totally disaffected and alone, and you feel like nobody's listening to you, and then you start getting this feeling that there might be something wrong with the system that you're actually trying to talk to. You know, because you will find that this system serves itself 100% of the time, with absolutely 100% disregard for your human rights. So I'm at Crawberry Hill at the minute, but I have been at Barton Moss for the last 3 months as well. So obviously when you're actually at the camp and you're living there 24/7, you get to see what is actually going on. So it becomes even more obvious. Like for example on Barton Moss, you wake up and there's 200 police lining the road down a footpath in Manchester. Now you basically get to see the police state that we all live in, but because the police state is contained within a certain area, you will get people saying, no, everything's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with this, I don't see anything wrong. And the reason being is most of the time people are exposed to the extremes of the fascist regime that we live in. And I know that might sound a bit extreme, because I have been called that before, but that's basically where we're at. We are living in a fascist police state, and obviously now, as individuals, we need to stand up and get together and say no together. Because I can promise you one thing, the only thing that's going to stop this is you and me and everybody together. You know, that's what's going to stop it. And it really doesn't take that many people to do it. You know, if you had 300-400 people up at them sites just to stand there and say, look, no. You know, and obviously people have got concerns about being arrested, you know, with their employment and everything else, but there's plenty of people up there that will go like that to make sure you don't get arrested, you know, and it is the people power that will actually stop this. So with regards to the Humberside Police and the Greater Manchester Police, they're both corporations, they're both businesses, so there's basically no difference between these police forces. Now the Humberside Police are using the Trade Unions Act laws and basically calling the camper picket, you know, and telling us that that's the way it is. So this, using this law, this enables them to totally disregard the right for peaceful protest, which is what they're actually supposed to be doing. Now another thing is, while we've been on the camp, we've had quite a few people driving by rolling the windows down and screaming, "Get a job!" You know, so that's quite, I don't know, it's weird, you know, because I know that I gave up working 6 months ago, but before that I'd worked for 26 years. I've been in the army for 5 years, and then I actually drove HGVs for the last 20 years, you know, but it, like I say, it does come to a point where you've got to look at, you know, I'm comfortable here, it doesn't affect me, and the other side of it. So, you know, it was coming a long time that I'd give up my job, because basically you have to give up your job to do this 24/7, 7 days a week. And it's not the most comfortable thing to do in the world, but it's the right thing to do, I think. So if I was to say anything to you, I'd say come up, join the camp, do as much as you can. You know, camp if you can, but what everybody individual does makes a difference. You know, whether you're up there 24/7 or you're spreading the word on the computer or bringing food, water, supplies. Because I can tell you, everybody at these camps are out there for your children and your grandchildren and your family. You know, that's their major motivation. It's not money and greed and see how rich we can get. You know, because it's pretty much a thankless job most of the time, but I think it's a worthwhile one also. So anyway, peace and love, and hope to see you there soon. Excellent.